Welcome to another episode of the Success Mindset podcast. I am very excited with my good friend Dawn Marie Johnson joining me today. For those who may not have had the privilege of getting to know you, why don't you tell the world a little bit about who you are and what you do?
Yes, thank you for having me. So currently, I am the CTE and Community Outreach Coordinator at Joe Foss. It resides in the Axtell Park building, which serves credit recovery, people who have had adversities in their life, and they come to us to either catch up or just have a different sort of space to be in high school. Um, Coming to you is a new position with the South Dakota After School Network. In the next 3 months, I'll be transitioning out of Sioux Falls School District, and I will be the new Director of Leadership and Culture for all after-school programs here in South Dakota. So I'm really excited. There's a lot of big moves coming up, but I
Yeah.
feel like I've done some pretty neat things with Joe Foss since I've been here.
Absolutely. So how we got connected to a
Right.
degree. We were coerced to say, come and see these amazing kids. And
Mhm.
they were every bit of what you described of having so much potential, so much limitless possibilities. And we were excited to come and do a pilot at the school with these wonderful kids. And so following you around, that was one of my first really interactions. Obviously, you were in Leaders Tomorrow for the teachers in the summer of 21.
Right.
Uh, but following you around, I remember that first day, it sits with me very clearly, and just seeing the energy you gave these kids. And oftentimes, obviously, people know, the world defines success as money, power, fame, and we all know that that's not the thing. But in that moment of seeing you engage with these kids, and a lot of people talk about being present. And there
Mhm.
was something about you in that moment, and every kid that came by, you were present and you gave them everything you had in that moment. Why, when you think about success, or just again, life is really made up of those quality moments and engaging with people in those relationships. What
Mhm.
do you do to ground yourself in the moment of how do you get yourself to truly be present when people need you, especially in the job that you do on a day-to-day basis?
I'll have to say, even up until like 2 years ago, I didn't have a definition for success. Success to me meant having stairs in your house. Like once you had stairs in your house, you made it. And so when I had students coming to me with all these different adversities and showing up that day was their success, they made it, right? That was their proud moment. And it was a lot of grounding that it brought to me. And every single day when students would walk in, I knew I had to be the person they wanted to show up for. And to be that person is taxing. Like it truly is. Every educator knows that it's such a selfless work and you're running constantly and you have people depending on you. So to take a step back and focus on myself was huge for me. So last year during Leaders of Tomorrow, I took the commitment to be a little more selfless and selfish. I needed to be selfish so I could give myself to them every single day because I wasn't. I felt really burnt out. I was tired. And you saw what I did, right? Every single day, it was a roller coaster. One minute we were happy and cheering and we were celebrating a graduation. The next minute, we had some truly terrible news coming through with a student who had something horrible happen. So to take time for myself was really a huge piece and component that I had to work on this last year to make sure that I could be my better self for all my students and my family.
Love that. Love that. I want to backtrack just a little bit because you said something that important in there. Success used to be having stairs in your house.
Hmm.
Unpack for those who don't know a little bit about your background, because again, if you don't come from environments of not having, it's easy to overlook, like, what does that really mean, or the significance of that. What was a little bit about your background, and why was that success for you for so long?
Yeah, I grew up in a very rural space in South Dakota. It's in the northeast corner. It's called Wabe, and it resides on the Sisseton Wahpeton Oyate tribe. I grew up on the south side of the tracks, and we were the income-based housing space, double-wide trailer home space.
Hmm.
People on the north side of the tracks had the big, beautiful houses, the parents who weren't divorced.
Mm.
And so for me, again, up until 2 years ago, even, success meant having stairs and parents that weren't divorced or some sort of parental unit that was together.
Yeah.
And I never had that. So when I moved here and I got stairs, I was like, oh my gosh, I made it.
Mm.
But really, it didn't change how I felt. I wasn't happy. I wasn't being my best self. I wasn't reaching full potential, my full capacity. So stairs really didn't mean a damn thing.
Yeah.
And now that I've invested in myself and I've put forth effort to make sure I'm giving back all of me in the best way,
Mm-hmm.
it's truly changed. It's changed the game for me.
Yeah, it's a really big deal. You're one of the hottest things smoking in terms of like the community seeing this next great leader. You're now on the race relations committee. People are like, you're going to be asked to do a lot of things. You're making, and you're fully embracing that, right?
Mm-hmm.
And when you think about that, and I've been there as well. When people see you now and they feel like, oh, this has always been. I remember recently sharing my story about, the first 6 years of my life, my dad was in prison, and someone had said, I had no idea. I thought you grew up 2-parent household and these different things. Talk about the other side of that for people when again, of being of the have-nots and various things, where they would be surprised that just up until a couple of years ago, you had, didn't even aspire for some of these things, and most of your life was only reaching so far. When you talk about exposure and not reaching for those, unpack a little bit of the psychology of not just yourself, but where you come from and people who come from similar circumstances. Why do you think that's an important thing for people to understand? You don't grow up reaching for those levels.
Yeah, statistics would say that Native Americans don't make it past high school. The dropout rate is, I think, the highest of any race for Native Americans. Me getting to college was a huge deal. I was the first person in my entire family, that includes cousins, aunt, uncles, extended family, to get a college degree, let alone now recently in 2020 a master's degree. So to have that, I had to fight a lot of battles, and it wasn't anything exterior. It was very much so in my mind. And I thank my mom every single day for valuing education. It has put me in the mindset of where I am today, knowing how important education is, to instill that in my daughter. But without me persevering and finding the proper supports, there was no way I was going to make it. I left. When I left. There was no, oh, hey, here's $20 to fill up with gas. No, when I left the reservation, I had to work 40 hours a week on top of going to school. And I've done that ever since. And I thank my mom for that work ethic 100%. But it was hard. Most people that are in my family are still there. And that's okay. Like, I want them to know that's okay, but there is more out there. And it was a huge risk for me to leave because I know not many people make it outside of that. But what I've come to find in Sioux Falls is that even not being from a reservation, people, especially Native American population, that we're still hurting, we're struggling here. And I know that's very prevalent and known in this community, but what are we doing for that? Who's speaking up for them that actually understands what's going on? And what I've come to find with my students especially is that just having the relative face provides that trust factor. It took maybe 5 to 6 months for some of my students to know that I was trustworthy, but once they knew I was Indigenous too, they showed up to school. Once they knew I was somebody they could trust, they started coming around. Even with our next gen cohort, like, they needed to trust me first before they invested in something I was putting out there. And that's just been like my whole life. I've had to find people to lean on, but once they've provided me skills and we could grow together, then I tried to supersede that and be the next elite professional or the next elite whatever the space is, because people have taken the time, and I'm so grateful to teach me those things. Yeah. And I want to do that too. I want to provide that for my students in the community, especially the Indigenous population.
Yeah, it's such an important thing where, historically, I think where we've had the missed opportunity is a lot of well-meaning individuals who want to help, but you can't have the compassion that you need from a distance.
Right.
And that's one of the things where, again, I applaud people like you. I applaud all educators. I applaud people at the front lines of doing the work, because it's hard work. Well, we always try at every turn to say, how can we reinvest? How can we empower and pour into people such as yourself and other people coming behind you? But so many people miss that opportunity of you can't have compassion. You need to at a distance. And so how people can get engaged, because again, these kids, without trust, it doesn't matter. Especially when you're coming from world of not feeling trusted or not having trust, right? As you think about what you're pouring into these kids, and maybe even unpack just a little bit of what you're seeing in terms of hope, right? Because as Man's Search for Meaning, Viktor Frankl, he talked about one of the first things that determined people's success or surviving the Nazi Germany death camps was hope. What have you seen in these kids in these last months as they've engaged, not only just what you're pouring into them as love and support, but now going through Leaders of Tomorrow, next generation, how are you seeing their confidence change or their hopes and ambitions and dreams change?
Yeah, we've taken time to unpack history first, knowing that just even my great aunt was a part of the boarding schools. It's not that long ago. So recognizing that first was huge. But then just the other day, I had a gal where I had to look at her straight in the face and say, that's a victim's mentality. We are at the stage of healing now. Boarding schools is now, 2 generations back. We are at the healing stage. We need to move forward. And she just stopped and stared at me, and I'm like, do you hear me?
Yeah.
This is us. We are the change. We are going to move forward. So even in our cohort groups, a lot of them took a minute to realize that they could do more than just show up that day. They could do more than just get that one assignment done. I think we had a kid say the other day he's working on his relationship with his dad. That was huge for him. Moving forward and, taking it day by day, the little successes has been really important for our kids, especially even writing out their day. What does a successful day look like to them? It doesn't have to be huge. Unfortunately, when I walked in and I'm like, oh yeah, I'm going to DC, I'm presenting on this, or I just got nominated for an MB thing, and they're like, oh my gosh, you're successful. And I'm like, but you're successful too. Yes. It doesn't take something huge for you to be successful. And we've had to do that with them every week. What do? We always clap for them. It could be something so small as going and working out. Great.
Yep.
You were probably just battling diabetes in your family just by going to the gym yesterday.
Yeah.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
So I think it's been really key for them to map out what success looks for them. The big wins, the little wins, us celebrating it every week has been important. And I truly feel like we're changing the trajectory of those students in that cohort. I'm so excited to see what's going to come of that group of kids just because they were celebrated every single week.
Yes.
That's been important.
And they deserve it.
They so deserve it.
They so deserve it.
They're so awesome.
And I argue, obviously love my kids, right? And they get it all of the time. And that's why it's important to realize, in society, it's easy to say you should know better. And okay, let's unpack this. Let's go back to their childhoods, and let's go back to the environments, and let's go back to first generation who had never had anyone show them that success was possible. So based off of all of the things, where should I have known better? And this is why this is a big community topic for me, because those who know better do better. Well, if we know better, because you can easily say that kid we know the data. If that kid's not reading up to par by third grade, the likelihood of him being successful goes down exponentially. But yet, what are we doing about those things, right? But I like what you said too, the other side of it for the kids. You can't just allow them to sit in victimhood, right? In Author of My Life, I talk about your life and your success will be defined by the narrative you choose to tell yourself. So even unpack a little bit again, these last couple of years, you've seen a trajectory in your life, in your career, why people are wanting you to be on this. And they're like, Dahmer, your name's floating around heavy. Share with folks to say it doesn't take much other than just say, I'm willing to show up. And in this short window of time, what was it that really clicked for you, or how did you get to the next plateau where you started to believe in yourself, or the narrative? What was the narrative maybe that you changed about yourself that now has you presenting yourself in a different way, where people are seeing that, where they want you to be involved in stuff?
Hmm. Giving myself grace has been huge. I think even when we first met, my biggest fear was public speaking. It makes me cringe sometimes and still does, but practicing that often as much as possible has been important for me. Now that I have people seeking me out to speak on behalf of others and be the advocate that my students, my people deserve, I know how important it is for me to do that. We were talking the other day and I said, how dare I not? Like, that's the mindset that I need to take, is how dare I not be or live up to that full potential when I know how recent it was that my family was not given the proper education. They weren't treated fairly. I mean, even still to this day, but more so even just that 2 generations back. And that's the mindset that I've taken, is it would just, it would be cruel and unfair to not do it. My mama did not raise me to have a victim's mentality.
Yeah. Yeah. I often tell myself, obviously, if not you, who? And again, you look around, it's like I can complain all day long. We all know complaining doesn't do anything for you, right? And same thing with my dad, growing up here in town, like I sitting on, the board for the Chamber of Commerce, like he couldn't have done that. They wouldn't allowed him, right? Just one generation ago. Or, some of the other things that I get to do, or that I'm building a multi-million-dollar business. Like these things just weren't available to him, right? So how dare we not step into that? There was a gal that I met in Leadership South Dakota, Sarah Pierce was her name. She again said, this is the first generation of indigenous people that could really speak out and be, because other people weren't, right? These didn't have the opportunity. So as you think about the characteristics of success, right? Because, success leaves clues. What are some of those characteristics for you that stand out, that you would define success, what success as? What are some of the things that you're growing into to become that next better version of yourself and step into your success and your potential?
As a social worker, we always key into Maslow's hierarchy of needs, and the top piece being self-actualization. When I look at it, I've done the bottom pieces and I'm inching my way, and I feel so good right now to be in that self-actualization point. So as far as success, I feel like it goes hand in hand with self-discovery and knowing myself. Who I'm serving, who I'm speaking for is huge, but also not having excuses. Excuses are so easy to do, even down to the smallest, oh, I didn't work out today because it was windy. Like, it's too windy out.
First world problems.
Right, yeah, first world problems, big time. So those two for sure, I can say have been a driving force for me.
That's really good. As you step into this new role, which again, leadership, culture, obviously two things we love a lot. What are some of the things you're hopeful for, the impact that you're hoping to make in this new role that you're about to embark upon?
So I was in the world of after school for 8 years before I moved here to Sioux Falls and was with the school district. I know and have seen firsthand how taxing it is to be in after school, because it's usually not a space where people are thinking it as a profession. Some people will say it's a childcare provider, and I strongly disagree. There's so much enrichment and powerful connections that go into after school. And the piece that I always have to remind people of is that it's outside of school time. Outside of school time, it's not school. The component that's missing in school will be picked up in after school, that enrichment piece. And the after school people worked through the whole pandemic. They were serving meals. They were still providing online care. There was a lot that these people did, and we are still picking up the pieces from that. So with that, my leadership and culture title, given there's really no skeleton of what I'm going to be doing, my biggest piece is just making sure everybody's okay. because they're tired. We're
Yeah.
all so tired. So, what can I do? What can I bring to them to build them back up and know that they're valued, they're important, we love them, they're doing it, they killed it, they did all the things.
Mm-hmm.
I need to check in with them first,
Yeah.
and then the development will come after, right? Same with education. Relationship first, education second.
Yeah.
Same thing. Investing in people is going to be important.
Yeah. Another one of those that our community. I talk about a lot of these things in scope of like how do we make these community issues, because again you can look at the data that if we don't catch these things here, we can see it's very clear. You go if you unpack the background of the prison population, you could see the seedlings of where it happened. They start to make trouble here, and things start to happen because they come from XYZ socioeconomic issues, and when a lot of folks can't afford again after school daycare or care or investment, which is probably a better word for me, is the investment, because if people don't have people at home, again, I'm blessed that my wife gets off at 2:30, so she's able to pick both my girls up. They will never know daycare after school, and they have a loving parent at home caring for them. In the absence of that, we all know idle hands, right? Kids looking for something to get into. And I love that you brought up Maslow's hierarchy of needs, because sense of belonging is in our DNA.
Mm-hmm.
And you're going to belong one way or the other. And in some of these environments, if you don't have a place to go, that's a big deal. As we look forward to where our community is going. So Sioux Falls, obviously, I'm a born and raised resident, love this community in a lot of ways. As you think about Sioux Falls 2040, 2050, somewhere in that neighborhood, the diversity makeup is huge, and it's shifting fast.
Oh, yeah.
A lot of our community is not even close to being aware. They hear the number 40% diversity coming out of our schools. And I don't care what you think about diversity, it's happening, right? As you think about what it will take to continue to have a successful community in 2040, 2050, and working ourselves back, what are a few things from your perspective, from your seat, that you think are critical for our broader community to start to wrap their head around to say, if we want to hand over a successful community, because today we're successful, right? We have great economic runs, a lot of great things happening. So it's easy to say Sioux Falls is successful today, but to keep that string going, what are a few things that we have to start to tend to be aware of, to be mindful of, to remain successful 20 years from now?
I'm really glad you asked this, because it's in the forefront of my mind right now. But representation is going to be huge. Even at Joe Foss, we are actually at closer to a 70%, and I like to say world majority. I don't like the word minority. We're at 70 to 75% world majority population of students. What are we doing to match that so students can walk in and trust their educators just based off of their proximity? What are we doing? I really struggle with that. And it's not even just in education. It's a lot of different companies, organizations, people who are representing community organizations. Are we matching the percentage of world majority people right now? I don't think so.
For sure. Big gap to close.
Big gap to close.
And that's where we always, it's not about perfection, it's about progress, We can stand behind, again, what wasn't done, and I can be very clear looking back to what my father had to deal with from race and those type of things. And I think that's where I truly believe, obviously, being engaged with a lot of community leaders, that they're not the ones who did it, and they're not the ones that are still holding people out, but somewhere we have to now overcompensate.
Yeah.
And to say, again, you can look across, we don't have representation. Again, if you don't have someone that looks like you or comes from the same background, you just can't understand. I don't know what it's like truly being a woman. I can have 3 daughters like I do and a wife, so I can kind of understand. But again, until you're actually that person or from that race or from that whatever, is this a difference of truly being able to understand and having that empathy.
Yes.
When you look back, 80 years old, you had a good life. 80 until 30-something right now. What are a few key factors that you'll have to look back with satisfaction to say that was a quality life? I feel like my life was a success in my eyes. What are a few of those key factors that will make up that big smile on your face and say that was a good life?
Oh, that's a good question. I do remember being rocked in Leaders of Tomorrow when you guys asked, do you feel like your child would live the life that you lived?
Mm-hmm.
And I got really emotional because I said no. So since then, I feel like I've been working really hard to ensure that I'm pouring into the right people, pouring into the right spaces, organizations, my daughter especially. Living intentional every single day, fulfilling my
Mm-hmm.
day. Time used to be really scary. Like, oh, I don't have enough time to do this, X, Y, Z. But if I set up my day properly,
Mm-hmm.
time is on my side, and thank goodness for it. So I can have the most with my daughter.
Yeah.
And there's really no big thing or stairs to reference when I
Mm-hmm.
think back to if I had a good life. I just want to know that I impacted people and they'll remember me as the person who is caring. They'll remember me as the person that they could count on. But I want to be remembered as a happy person.
Mm-hmm.
That hit me the other day in our leadership group when you asked, who do you know is successful and who do you know is happy? And there was a group of kids that turned around and they're like, oh, that's John Murray. And I was like, yes. Wow. I cried, honestly. I did. I cried. And that's my 80-year-old self. I want to know that I've made people feel happiness. I want to make sure that I left that impression on them when they think of me or the time that we had.
Yeah, that's really good. And I always, one of my mantras is you teach through the clarity of your example.
Mm.
Don't tell me how to do it, show me. And from that example, you're inspiring that next generation for some of those kids to want to be a educator, right? We need more representation in education. How many kids are growing up today still wanting to be teachers? If you don't see teachers being happy, why we're huge into investing into the cultures of our teaching community and the teachers because they deserve it. Again, God bless them. Again, I do JA every now and again, and I couldn't do it.
Yeah,
right?
tough business.
It is, but again, you guys are shaping our future, right? And so that's such a huge thing when you can kind of be that example of what's possible. It's not about what you do; it's how you do it, and how you live. And so I'm going to plant the seed. There's very few people in my sphere that I believe this wholeheartedly on. But again, I want you to start believing you're going to impact millions with an M because I know you have it in you and you're going to do that. So I'm just going to plant that seed on air, on record. You heard it here first. Millions. Last question, which we'd like to toss out a curveball. So we got our cube conversation cards.
Oh,
So
nice. Okay.
we're going to just grab a random one from the middle of the deck.
Let's see it.
And roll with it. Choose one word to adopt in your life and perspective this year.
Wow. Choose one word.
It's a lot of pressure.
Mm-hmm.
One word.
Progress.
Okay.
Yeah. Yes.
Progress. Why progress?
Progress. So given I'm leaving my students, I'm not actually leaving them, but I want them to continue to make progress towards the things that we work on.
Mm-hmm.
With my new position, that's all progress. It's never been done. This title has never happened in after school. So I want to make huge progress and lead the way for future people who want to do the same thing.
Love it. Love it. You're not leaving your students. You two are graduating.
Yes.
You're graduating to the next thing. So
staying together. Yes.
Well, thank you so much for joining me. What a great conversation. Again, it's great to unpack, success. That's why I love it. To me, success is, the progressive realization of a worthy ideal. And obviously you have that clear picture of what a worthy ideal is, and you are making progress towards that thing. So appreciate the time and look forward to seeing you guys on the next episode.
Thank you.